Okay, welcome to a random walk down Mill Street. Today is Thursday, March 24th. Normally the class meets on Wednesday, but because of the electors meeting last night, we moved this class to Thursday. I also want to tell you that little preview, we are hopefully in coming weeks, maybe even very soon, probably starting before Passover, so that's very soon, going to be starting a trial, something of a Shearith Israel chorale or chorus, and that will probably meet on Wednesday evenings, in which case this class may permanently be moved to Thursdays, but stay tuned. So hopefully if you can make it on Wednesday, you can make it on Thursday. I see most of you are. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. And here we go. And make sure that I can still see you. Okay, great. Okay. I do want to thank our session sponsors this evening, which is Jack and Ann Solomon, in memory of Jack's uncle, Herman Prin Solomon, who passed away just a little bit over a year now. I did take a look and saw many of your names and your family's names in the electors book. I don't know if we'll get to show them or not, but they are there. So thank you, Jack and Ann. Tonight we are going to talk about the constitutions of Shearith Israel, and just to show you that there have been quite a few. The very first one, which we do not have an extant copy of, is only mentioned in the second constitution, was certain wholesome rules that were adopted in the year 1705, 1706. And then the first written constitution was from the year 1728. We still have a copy of that. But there were additional ones. There was a constitution of 1761, a pretty famous constitution of 1790, which we're going to look a little bit of the language of, and then the constitution in 1805. The reason that there is a constitution of 1805, they changed a few of the rules, nothing crazy or outrageous. I mean, I'm not even going to get to the details of what was changed, internal governance issues. But the other thing is that there was an act to incorporate Religious Incorporations Act of New York State law in 1801, which necessitated a new constitution for Shearith Israel, the result of which was in 1805. And that is the constitution that we still operate under, with several amendments since that time. But essentially, we are using the same constitution that was enacted in 1805 to this day. So there was a lot of activity before that, and since then, pretty stable governance rules for our congregation. This is a photo of the Constitution of 1728. As you can see, before the American Revolution, in the early years of our congregation, the minutes and the Constitution were taken in parallel columns. The left hand you'll see is in Portuguese. The right hand is in English. This is where the reference to the earlier 1705, 1706 Constitution is found, which they even call certain wholesome rules and restrictions. And this was the oldest extant constitution that we have. And this lasted again until 1761. There were some changes made then as well. One of the early issues that they kept having was having to do with intermarriage, and so certain rules got put in place to make sure that, or to limit the rights of people who had married out of our religion. And so that happened in 1761. And then in 1790, after the American Revolution, they adopted a new constitution. And it's quite interesting and famous. Occasionally it gets loaned, the original document, which is in our archives, gets loaned out to museums because it consciously mirrored the Constitution of the United States in several ways. One is, if you took up the preamble and the introduction, I copied here for you on the left-hand column. So you can see, even just the beginning, we, the members of the Kehillah Kedosha Shearith Israel, met this day. It just we, the people of the United States, it sort of starts in a constitutional kind of manner. And if you take a look at the third paragraph here, in a state happily constituted upon principles of equal liberty, civil and religious, the several societies as members of that government partaking of that blessing, being free to adopt the best means for preserving their privileges and for entering into such compact for regulating and the well ordering of their internal institutions for the administration of the affairs of the several communities as may be most likely attain to the end, and on and on and on. But they mention that the founding of this country is on principles of equal liberty, civil and religious. And then the previous constitutions didn't say anything like that. And then if you look on the right column, so then that continues with the Constitution. The right column is actually a section which is a Bill of Rights, literally a Bill of Rights, which the board of our congregation after the in the 1780s, 1789, asked to be made part of the Constitution, and this is where it starts. Whereas in free states, all power originates and is derived from the people. This is a very, very constitution, affected by the Constitution of the United States document. Always retain every right necessary for their well-being individually, and for better ascertaining those rights with more precision and explicitly, frequently form a declaration or bill of those rights. And then they so on. They give the Bill of Rights for the members of our congregation. Very important rights like who gets to get called up when they have a bar mitzvah or when they have a mitzvah. These are enshrined in the Bill of Rights of 1790. Okay, that's enough for that. The Constitution is quite interesting historically, but it's no longer operating. What we do use today is the Constitution of 1805. And by the way, I'm sure I'm going to get some questions about this. We do have, it's hard to, I have it blurred, but it's pretty effective. This is a little printed pamphlet that anyone who wants to can write to me and I can send to you with the text of the Constitution. And this is given out to all the electors when they sign the Constitution. We're going to talk about that next. But the Constitution is written in a big Talmud-sized tome, which you can see pictured here on the left. And the beginning, which I didn't print for you, is about 20 pages of an act for the incorporation of religious societies in New York State. So the enabling act, so to speak, of why there is a Constitution of 1805 is this New York State law, which created religious corporations in New York. And because of that, the entirety of those laws are reprinted in the beginning of this book. And then you have, following that, the Constitution itself. I've just given you the cover page of it, but it's quite a few pages, which is then signed. And you can see here on the bottom left. And the people who signed it are, the names we hear about in the history of our congregation: Gershom Mendes Seixas, Shearith Alexander Zunz, Naftali Judah, Isaac Moses, Ephraim Hart, Meyer Myers. I mean, all the names we read about in Dr. Poole's history books of early American Jewish history and early New York Jewish history are found signing the Constitution of 1805. Following the articles of the Constitution are also bylaws, which are additional laws relating to the congregation, and those are also signed. So you get a lot of these signatures are actually here twice. All the people who signed the Constitution also signed the bylaws, and then following that, for 30 or 40 pages, couple people every year become electors in a whole ceremony, which we just did last night. Take a look at some of the chat here. Okay, will do. So the question, why did 1801 affect 1801? It just took them a while to get the Constitution in order. So in 1801, I believe, or 1802, 1801 was this New York State law providing for the incorporation of religious societies in New York State. And that necessitated, because there were now different laws, it necessitated the incorporation of Shearith Israel according to those laws, which required a constitution, a new constitution. And so it took them a few years to write it up. And when they did, this was the result. Okay. Now, there's actually something, if you take a look at this, you'll see by the names, someone wrote dead, or sometimes they abbreviate deceased. And the reason for that is because this book was used to keep track of who could vote in elections of the congregation. And so it wasn't merely a historic document. It was an actively used document to determine who was able to vote. So when someone passed away, they marked it so they would know who the electors are and who's no longer an elector, and be able to match up those people voting with the names in the book. I think I took a picture here. Let's see if I put it in my slideshow here. No, I didn't do it. Okay, let me find for you the picture I want to show you quickly here. Okay, here we go. Okay, you should see on your screen some boxes. And these are usually, last night and the year before, we had virtual meetings on the internet. But in a normal year, when we meet in person, the very first order of business, after accepting the minutes of the previous electors meeting, is to well, nowadays what we do is we dispense with the black ball ceremony. But there are two electors meetings every year. The first electors meeting, which is one that took place last night, has as its function to elect the shamash. I said that first because that's my job. The chazan and the shochet. Those are constitutionally required positions of Shearith Israel. There is no requirement to have a rabbi or a lecturer or any other office, no constitutional requirement to have an executive director, but there is a constitutional requirement to have a chazan, a shochet, and a shamash. And so that is done every single year. And there is another thing, which is the approval of new electors. Another word for electors, if you go back to our old constitutions and parallel to the rules that govern our sister synagogues in Amsterdam and London, is yechidim. The individuals, the members of the synagogue are also the electors. But in our synagogue and in others, not every level of membership, or not every member or seat holder is entitled to vote. You have to be here for a number of years. There are certain other requirements that are in place in order for someone to be able to vote. But you don't automatically get to vote. You have to apply to become an elector. And when you apply, you are then voted on by the current electors to see if they want to admit you to this club of voting members of Shearith Israel. And I could see, theoretically, a situation where maybe people don't want such a person who was nominated to become an elector. I don't know why they would disqualify somebody, but I could see it happening. And it might also be very awkward to have a public vote on such a matter. And so we have these boxes that you see in front of you, which are there to have a vote, anonymous vote, done by black and white balls. White would be for, black would be against. Literally blackballing someone would be to drop a black ball into the box when voting their name came up. In my entire life, I have never seen them used. They are always dispensed with immediately, as was done yesterday, but they could be used, and we have the paraphernalia to use them. These are two boxes. I don't know which one is older. At first, I thought the one on the left with the handle is older, but I took a look at the screws and nails that hold it together, and they look more modern than the one on the box on the right. Either way, what happens is there is a box with a hole in it. The current electors drop a ball, either white or black, in it, and afterwards they get counted up and determined whether the person made it as an elector or not. Thankfully, we didn't use them last night, and the new electors were approved. And so the next step that they have to do is come and sign the Constitution, which we're going to go back to right now. Take a look at some of the comments. Antiques Roadshow, yeah. Yeah, I could imagine if they hadn't written dead, how the counting might have gotten very strange. Also, the making sure that we had a quorum could get a little interesting as well. Okay, let's see here. Let me stop the share. Why am I, here we go, stop share. And let's put back the other slideshow. Okay. Okay, so people often ask, so when we have this little ceremony, when someone becomes an elector, of late, what I've done is I bring the elector's book, the Constitution, to the little synagogue. I set it up, they sign it, I take some pictures so they have it for posterity. And I give people, everyone a few minutes to look through it, because there is something powerful about putting your name in the same document as these founding fathers of our congregation. And so people like to look through it frequently. Sometimes if they're in a rush, they won't, but often people like to look through it. And if it's someone who has had ancestors, parents, grandparents in the congregation, they like to go find their names as well. But invariably, most people will ask me about who's in the book, and they'll say, oh, Benjamin Cardozo's in the book. That's amazing. Emma Lazarus must be in there. No, Emma Lazarus is not in there. Neither are any women until the year 1989. Even though women got the vote much earlier in this country, not in this congregation. The suffrage movement for women in this congregation was very active until 1989. And by the way, if you ask me for a copy of the Constitution, I send it to you. I will send you a copy of the Constitution, but I will also email you the amendment of 1989, because otherwise, if I give you this little booklet, which is printed in 1910, 1920, it says that there are no women electors. So one of the interesting things is taking a look at that page, which we're going to look at now. As you can see, on December 6th, 1989, the very first female elector of our congregation was Gilda Angel, followed by Irma Lopez Cardozo and Else Bentheim, and on and on and on. And it's an interesting page, actually. I can tell you personal family story. My grandparents were very traditional people, and both not only just religiously but also congregationally, and they opposed change. And my grandmother was not in favor of women voting in the Constitution, in the elections, and so she does not appear here. And she, I'm sorry if my mother is embarrassed by this. I hope not. She actually campaigned against women's suffrage in the congregation. Didn't win. But my mother, by the way, had a different opinion, and she's right there on those among the first people signing. So there you go, a little family history for you as well. So since that time, obviously, men and women both vote in our congregational elections. Okay, that is the end of my slideshow, but not the end of our class. I think I'm going to pause here for questions. I'm going to read the I got at least one request that says it's hard to hear me. Is anyone else finding that hard to hear me? No, most people can hear me. Okay, sorry, George. Would it be possible to read out the names on the signature page? I could read the names. I'd only copied a few of them, so I could do those if that's what you're interested in. So we'll take a look. Yes, Steve, 1989. 1989 is the year. But the name, there are many, many, many names. So was the 1728 Constitution the only one with Portuguese? No, I believe the 1761 Constitution also had Portuguese. It's not just the Constitution. See, this book that I showed you from 1805 is just the Constitution and all the electors that sign it. But previous to that, and the same thing with the 1790, but before the Revolution, the Constitution was just made part of the minute book. And so you'll get the trustee minutes and the Constitution, and sometimes you'll have ledgers, sometimes there'll be a ketubah handwritten into it. The earlier books are less organized than the ones from the 19th century. The ones from the 18th century are kind of like ledgers or diaries almost, which have all the information of the congregation going on in more or less chronological order. And there, until the Revolution, most of those are parallel in Portuguese and in English, beginning in 1728 and through the 1740s and 1750s. By the 1760s, I think they might just be switching to English only. But certainly, it's not only the 1728 Constitution. By the way, because this class is sponsored in honor of Herman Solomon, I should mention that Herman Solomon, Zichrono Livracha, was an expert in Portuguese. And one of his published papers had to do with the Portuguese as used here in this congregation in the earliest minute books. And so he analyzes it, and this is Portuguese written by people who didn't speak Portuguese. So he he analyzes the idiosyncrasies of the language that they're using. It's an interesting paper. Yes, Sherry, I saw your name and you signed it in Hebrew. I always note the people who sign in Hebrew. I think that's always a nice little touch. So, and the other thing, I mean, here, let's go put that picture back up, just because I think it's interesting. There it is. Okay. So I don't have all the pages, but you take a look here on the right, you'll see a lot of these signatures. And you'll see here, this one is, let's see if I can read it. It says, I think it says Liepman Joseph. I'm not sure if that's what it says. But then you can see he signed in Hebrew above it. And that's his name, you can tell from his name in English is Ashkenazic, but his Hebrew handwriting is very, very Ashkenazic. And occasionally you get other pages where you'll have Hebrew handwriting, which is Sephardic. So I guess kind of par for the course for our congregation, but it's interesting to note the way people sign and the handwritings that they use. And I always wonder if you can tell someone's education level, perhaps, or maybe what their professions were by how neat or nice their handwriting is. Some people have very, very beautiful handwriting, others completely do not. And it's interesting. Okay. So if you wanted to see here, let's just take a look. here. Sherry Miller, just because she is here. Actually, a lot of the people who saw this book are here tonight. But yeah, we can take a look here, December 6, 1989. So there you are. For posterity's sake, Sherry, you will always be remembered here in this book, along with Gershom and Eustachius, right here. Okay. Now, I did want to talk about one other thing, or a few other things, really. And I want to listen to some music, because after the elections, so this is the election that happens currently now in the spring. And then in the summer, there's another electors meeting where elections are done for the trustees. The Parnas, the president of the congregation, is not elected by the congregants themselves. There is no direct election for president in this synagogue. The congregants, the Yechidim, the electors, vote for the board of trustees, and the board of trustees elects the Parnas, and that takes place every year, usually in June. And then the Shabbat following the electors meeting and the election of the Parnas, a special Misha Berach is made that the Parnas should succeed in the current year, in the coming year, and have a successful reign. I don't know, I forgot the Hebrew language that's used, but it's an interesting Misha Berach. And one thing that you may not notice, but every single Shabbat, not on weekdays, we don't usually have too many Misha Berachs on weekdays, but on Shabbat we have everyone who gets called to the Torah has a Misha Berach made for them if they so wish, and that Misha Berach ends formulaically. Not only do we make a Misha Berach for whoever the Oleh, for whoever the person got called wants, sometimes they'll say themselves, sometimes they'll say their family, sometimes they'll do it in memory of someone or in honor of someone. But then after we've gotten the individual's actual wishes, Chazan then reads that the Misha Berach is also for the Parnas and the Sigan, or these days the Siganim. We have one of our Siganim here tonight, and the Anshe HaMa'amad, the board of trustees, and the Chazanim. So whether you like them or not, you're blessing them every single aliyah. You get the blessing for the Parnas, the Siganim, the Anshe HaMa'amad, and the Chazanim. So there you have it. You can't get away from that. And now I just want to close with a prayer that is done for the congregation every Shabbat. There is a Misha Berach that is made before we take out the Torah, after Shachrit is concluded. And we're going to listen to that right now. Let's see how I'm going to share this. Here it is. Okay. We're going to listen to two versions of this prayer. And let's see how I can share this. Okay. This is the Misha Berach as composed by Leon Kramer. So that is the Kramer Mishverach. How was the sound? Were you able to hear it okay? No. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Can't hear anything. Oh no. That share didn't work well. Okay. We're going to try it a different way. Do you want to hear that one again? Or there's another version. Yes, okay. So let me try it a little differently. Sorry about that. And this is what I was apologizing to beforehand about the incomplete nature of my slide show. Usually it would be there, embedded in it. Okay, let's see here again. Okay, let's try this one more time. And I apologize. Let's hope it works this time. You should see a page on YouTube now. And you'll tell me by thumbs up or thumbs down if you can hear the music. No good. I'm getting some thumbs down. Not great. I don't want to, if that's the same sound quality you had before, we're going to leave it over there. But I'm going to play for you one other one. But I want to tell you the way that this gets performed in the synagogue is on Shabbat morning, after the Shachrit, the prayer for the government is made, and then the Parnas Presidente, walks up to the Teba to announce the mitzvot of the Torah service. And while he's walking up, the choir sings this Mishverach. And it is it's a nice piece of choreography. There's sort of a grand entrance for the Parnas to the Teba while the choir is singing this melody. And we have two melodies. The first one that when I was growing up was the more usual one was this one that was done by Kramer. And then the other one is a melody that is composed by Solomoni Rossi, but it wasn't composed for this Mishverach text, which is from the prayer book of our congregation. It was composed to one of the Psalms. And our choir master of 66 years, Leon Hyman, transposed it and arranged it from that psalm to the Mishverach. And so we have to thank him for that piece. Another little insider baseball thing is that our current Parnas, Mr. Solomon, doesn't like the Kramer one, likes the Rossi one, and has let the choir know that, so that currently we pretty much always do Rossi whenever the Parnas is walking up, and on occasion, if he's not around for Shabbat, they'll throw in the other one, but they know his preference and they do the Rossi one pretty much every week. So now let's try to get the Rossi one. I don't know if it's going to be any better. Let's see. Let's see how I can effect this. All right, we're gonna try this again. I have the wrong one here. Let's see, get the right video on here. So that's the prayer for the congregation. Ooh, yeah, get a little extra here. Okay. That's the prayer for the congregation. That is what I have for you tonight. I did want to just show you a few of the, or read to you a few of the interesting language things inside the Constitution. So the I don't know if Mr. Mark Aaron is on, but he always likes to quote this to me. But Article 2, Section 3 reads as follows: There shall always be a chazan, shochet, and shamash chosen by the congregation to perform the services required of them in their several departments, subordinate officers to be chosen by the trustees. And Mark Aaron likes to make a lot about the term subordinate officers, which he believes includes the rabbi of the congregation, which is why I think, because of concerns such as had by Mark Aaron, we elect the rabbi as the chazan every year. No, the historical reason for that actually is quite interesting. In the 19th century, we had a chazan, Jacques Judah Lyons, who would very occasionally give a lecture in the congregation. There are a few published ones around the time of the Civil War. But in the 1850s, 1860s, and 1860s, congregation hired another position called lecturer, and they had a few people serve that role. One was a man named Jacobs, and I'm forgetting the other one's name. But they both were interesting and had illustrious careers as chaplains in the United States Army during the Civil War. Some of them were quite interesting. And then after that period, when they had a lecturer and a chazan and a shochet and a shamash, they also so then they hired Jacques Judah Lyons dies. He's getting elderly, and they hire an assistant for him whose name is Henry Pereira Mendes. And then after like 3 months of Henry Pereira Mendes being the assistant to Jacques Judah Lyons passes away. And Henry Pereira Mendes has a special skill set. He is an ordained rabbi. He is musical as a chazan. And so he fills both functions of lecturer / rabbi, if you want to call that, as well as the chazan. And then he had a long career, like 60 years. And so the congregation elected the lecturer or the rabbi as the chazan for a very long period of time. And then his successor was David de Sola Pool, again, a rabbi and a chazan. And so the congregation had like 100-year period where that was the norm. And that has stuck since that time. It wasn't that way in the 19th century, but now it basically the function, and I say function literally, I don't mean title, the function of rabbi is the chazan of our congregation. And so our current rabbi Angel and Rabbi Soloveitchik and Dr. Gerstein were all the elected chazan, much to the chagrin of people like Bram Cardozo and Rabbi Rode, who are functionally the chazan, but relegated to shochet. So that's what I have for you today. I'm going to stop the recording, and I hope to hear your comments and questions. Here we go.